Yes.
socializing. Now, it seems to me that this gifts, that the joys and concerns belong here or after the singing the children on?
No, the children, they can hear, yeah, and if they
Okay.
want to do joys and concerns, in the past we would encourage them, but that's sort of not, we haven't got that many kids, for one thing. I see one, which means there's probably two, because that's Julia. 3. I think we've got 3. May get a few more. It's almost time.
I've been here. Oh, you didn't go the last year? No, they got back late last night. I was telling the lady they got all the way to their car and Mary's dead. So they had to get back to the bus and go back. Yeah, they got it easy late last night.
I think some people were up too late last night. I didn't make it through the fourth quarter.
Well, I did, but.
I had gotten in 1 o'clock Saturday morning.
Oh.
I was a little sleepy crying.
Yeah, and I discovered that I need more sleep than I used to. It's really destroying. I mean,
I just, moving it around seems to solve no problem. Okay. Listening to my body is doing it when it's listening rather than listening to Western culture talks. But generally, I go to bed about 9. Wow, I get up at 5.
oh, okay.
9 to 5, just not
That's
work.
8?
Yeah. It's
I
sleep
tend-
time, not work time.
I tend to be at midnight or 1 o'clock.
Yeah, well, there were 2 morning persons, 2 night people, and 1 sort of in between. My daughter Paula and my husband Paul were both night
So I think we should begin at 10:30.
He marks the beginning.
He marks the beginning.
We'll sit down and shut off and just starts playing. Thank you, Corey. That was a great wake up. Good morning, everyone. My name is Holly Ulbrich, and I am board president and a member of the worship associate team. And I'm serving as your worship associate this morning. I put on my glasses so I know what I'm doing. We're happy to see faces of old and new friends gathered here today. The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Clemson is not just a tolerant community, it is truly a welcoming congregation. We receive you here gladly, regardless of your racial or ethnic background, age, economic status, political affiliation, gender expression, or sexual orientation. Our diversity is what unites us and makes us wiser and stronger. There are many spiritual paths in this world. You will find more than one represented in this congregation. You will not be judged for your beliefs. In fact, your choices are respected and encouraged to flourish. I hope that today's service will fill a place inside you that feels hungry for something deeper and that invites you to come back and be with us again. If you would like more information about UUFC, please check out our website or speak with the volunteer at the activities table in social room. That will be me today, following the service. You can also learn about many opportunities to learn, engage, and participate in the many activities that build our community as a home for spiritual growth and social action. Please read the announcements on the back of the bulletin. You don't have to read them right now, but you can take it home with them and read them later, or you can read them if you get sleepy. We'd also like to extend to all of you a cordial invitation to attend Saturday night's gala event. You may have gotten the postcard, and it's kicking off our stewardship campaign, and it's going to be festive, and we're going to get dressed up, which we don't do often. So the elegant evening is from 5 to 7 on Saturday, and details and a chance to sign up to attend, so you don't have to actually phone in your RSVP, are at the activities table in the social room. The scheduled movie night that was on the docket has been postponed to a later date. And we have other activities as well that you can learn about at that time. So at this time, I would like you to greet one another briefly. Conversation takes place later. And greet your neighbors, and then remain standing for the opening hymn, which is number 121.
I realize I need to have this with me. So I marked the 2 songs.
Right, but I've got to come back and do the rest of my spiel, and then
Anyway, well done.
I did some rewrites.
It's okay. I keep rewriting till the end.
Start us off. The opening words are by Ken Hawkins. Work is the creative activity of the universe within us, working through us in the world and for the benefit of all. We are thankful for the chance to share in creation through the work of hand and brain, to plan and design, to manufacture and grow, to serve and conserve, and to care for one another in all the places where we work. As I light the chalice, let us share in our words of affirmation, which are in the bulletin. We gather together in a spirit of love, with justice as our guide. Join together in peace, to seek the truth with freedom, and to care for one another. Drop. Good morning.
I have a really fun story to share with you all this morning about the magic and the mystery and the frustrations of work. It's called The Most Magnificent Thing. This is a regular little girl and her best friend in the whole wide world. They do all kinds of things together. They race, they eat, they explore, they relax. She makes things. He unmakes things. One day, the girl has a wonderful idea. She is going to make the most magnificent thing. She knows just how it will look. She knows just how it will work. All she has to do is make it. And she makes things all the time. Easy peasy. First, she lures an assistant. Next, they gather their supplies. They set up somewhere out of the way and get to work. The girl tinkers and hammers and measures while her assistant pounces and growls and chews. When she is finished, she steps back to admire her work. She walks around one side. Her assistant examines the other side. It doesn't look right. Her assistant picks it up and gives it a shake. It doesn't feel right. They are shocked to discover that the thing isn't magnificent, or good, or even kind of sort of okay. It is all wrong. The girl tosses it aside and gives it another go. She smooths and wrenches and fiddles. Her assistant circles and tugs and wags. When she is finished, she stands up and takes a long look at it. Her assistant gives it a nudge with his paw. This thing is still wrong. She decides to try again. The girl saws and glues and adjusts. She stands and examines and stares. She twists and tweaks and fastens. She fixes and straightens and studies. She tries all different ways to make it better. She makes it square. She makes it round. She gives it legs. She adds antennae. She makes it fuzzy. She makes it long, short, rough, smooth, big, small. One even smells of stinky cheese. But none of them are magnificent. Her hard work attracts a few admirers, but they don't understand. They can't see the magnificent thing that she has in her mind. She gets mad. The angrier she gets, the faster she works. She smashes pieces into shapes. She jams parts together. She pummels the little bits in. Her hands feel too big to work, and her brain is too full of all the not right things. If only the thing would just work. Then crunch! The pain starts in her finger. It rushes up to her brain. She explodes. It is not her finest moment. I'm no good at this. I quit. Her assistant suggests a walk. It's not much help at first, but before long she starts to feel different. Bit by bit, the mad gets pushed out of her head. As they stroll along, she comes across the first wrong thing she made. The bad feelings are about to start all over again. Then she notices something surprising. There are parts of the wrong thing that are really quite right. The The bolts on one, the shape on another, the wheel-to-seat ratio of the next. There are all sorts of parts that she likes. By the time she reaches the end of the trail, she finally knows how to make the thing magnificent. She gets to work. She works carefully and slowly, tinkering, hammering, twisting, fiddling, gluing, painting. Her assistant makes sure there are no distractions. The afternoon fades into evening. Finally, she finishes. She alerts her assistant. The pair take a good long look. It leans a little to the left, and it's a bit heavier than expected. The color could use a bit of work too, but it's just what she wanted. They climb aboard and take it for a spin. They are not disappointed. It really is the most magnificent thing.
Now, how many of you as adults can relate to that? Yeah, that's why I love that story. It's good for children, it's good for adults. So now we talked about the gifts for UUFC, and it's time for the ushers. Children like to come and gather the food. What I'd like you to notice while they're gathering the food, so they're shaking their head back there. It says it's not working quite right, but he's going to give me some instruction. There we go. It's much better. So as the children are gathering the food, think about the origin of the food. This whole theme, this whole morning, is all about work. Thank you. So there were farmers who grew that food, people who packed it, the people who created the aluminum cans to put it in, or the packages to pile it all together. All of this is work. We hardly ever think about it, but look at this wonderful array of work in front of you and the work that our children have done to bring it together for the Ripple of One this month. Wonderful. So it looks like you're ready to head out, but we do want to hear joys and concerns first. Looks like they are ready to be ushered out. Let's just begin with now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere. I always think it's wonderful to have the children. And so we have the joys and concerns, and I'm just making sure to see, isn't this wonderful? Part of the joy is seeing all that wonderful money flow in, knowing that a good bit of it then does go to the Ripple of One for this quarter. Work is obviously my theme. Work is something that I have believed in forever and ever. But work has many different components to it, and so we're going to just weave that into our joys and to our concerns. So, as I look right here at the joys, one of the joys is greeting new people who might be here for the first time or for the second time. And if you were comfortable, would you stand and say your name?
My name is Anne, and I am Liz's sister, and I'm very happy to be here.
So excited. She arrived during the storm last week, and with her husband, dog, and 4 cats. It's a lot. Let me read now the joys and the concerns. So this is from Elaine Faithful, and the doctor has diagnosed her with Parkinson's symptoms, with more tests to follow. Thank you. And from Meg Williamson, I'm so thankful for the 4 strong women who assisted me on the grounds yesterday. The flowers came from our beautiful sanctuary garden. And from Benedetta, happy to be home in Clemson with my boys JB and Wakam. So you'll notice that they were immediately put to work. One last joy. As you know, we have been gathering funds for the transition to our new minister, to our new full-time minister. Our goal was to raise $75,000. We have not only raised $75,000, but $99,000. Yes. And the question has come up from some, well, does that mean we're going to play with all of that? So it really does go into a special fund, which is specifically to bring on board the new full-time minister, and that if there is any money, so what that money does go for is to bring candidates in. We need to pay for that. It's for them to come and speak. We need to pay for the final person's transition here, what it takes for them to move. We need to pay for their housing, their benefits, all the things that come with being part of a minister. It will also pay for the COLA for our staff. And we're just delighted because they have not been given an increase in 5 years. So this funding will be a special fund that is set aside. It's not the general fund. It doesn't get whittled away for pencils and papers for other things. It is for the ministerial search and for the new minister coming on board. And thank you very much, very much. One more round of applause for all of us. I've been passionate about work since I was a child. And I want to show you my first job. That's a cue. Oh, come on. Oh. So there I am with my doll in the raked garden. I'm 3 years old, and I'm planting peas. Now, the wonderful thing about that is that some children come out and, scatter. But I am very deliberate, so I am planting each pea, just as my father has told me, and then I'm going to cover it up so that they will grow. That's sort of a characteristic for all of my life. What I want you to do now through this talk is think back to yourselves, what your first jobs were, and the characteristics of them. My father was a professional photographer. His specialty was actually agriculture. So I am probably the only person you know who's appeared on the front page of the Agriculture and Gardens section of the Portland Oregonian in 1943. But it didn't stop there. So this was my later job. And you can see by the expression on my face, I really like raking leaves.
Come to my house.
Well, and so when we will have the leaves all here, I'm the one who will go kicking through them as an adult, because that's wonderful. She's laughing because she knows some of these stories, yes. So, work. Well, work is something that we all do. Sometimes we say that work only exists if we're paid for it. But that's not true. So again, what I want you to do is, during this particular service, is think back to the work that you have done, that you've been involved in from the very beginning. Theoreticians have said, well, is work, what is work? Are you born with it? Was I born to be a gardener? Was I born to rake leaves? Well, there's some of those characteristics that show up in my adult life, and that is true for each of you. And then it gets nurtured. So not yet the end. We won't go to the end just yet. But it's coming. So work is work. We used to say, well, it's just work that you're paid for, right? But that's not true. So it's work that you volunteer for. I am working as a child. Was I being paid for it? No. I did get to jump in the leaves. But this is we have all been working since the time we're born. As children, we call it play. It's work. As seniors, for those of us who have retired, it's all play, yes? We volunteer, we do paid work, we do a whole variety of things, and we play. And it's all another variation on work. And my belief is that the work that you began with when you were just a child comes from God. Yes, I'm a deist. It comes from God. You'll notice as you've looked at every child around you, as you think back to your own childhood, it comes from God, and then it's nourished. You talk to any major performer, when did you first start singing? Well, when I was 2 or 3, right? We have Loretta Lynn's biography now. When did she start singing? When she was 2 or 3. You thought?
She sang at church, so she's at 4 or 5.
Yeah, she sang at church. And so what about for you? What did you start doing when you were that young age? Well, let's jump up a long way. So one of the things that I did, I went to college, went to 2 colleges actually, graduated from UC Berkeley, because that's actually my hometown. It's like going to Clemson for me. Berkeley was where all my family went to college. They all lived there. And so I graduated from there, but had no idea what I was going to do, so I got a master's in it. And I went to Boston University, still didn't quite know what I was going to do with it. And so I happened to be invited to come and be a teacher for the Boston University's program for the night school. I loved it. They had a whole collection of people who were being trained then for how to be instructors. Can you imagine that? All of us. There were about 20 of us who were being trained for how to be instructors at the college level. It was great. I did that for about 4 years. And then we moved back to California, and I taught at a community college for about 4 years. Then I was bored. So then let's begin now with the end. So it's when I woke up one day and I said, it's the end. I'm done. I'm done. I've done everything I can with this. I taught every kind of English course that there was to teach at that freshman level. So, the beginning level of English, teaching people who were just really learning how to read and to write. Can you imagine that at a college level? And then I taught English as a second language, and I taught literature of all kinds. And I woke up one day and said, I'm done. This was after about 4 years. How many of you have had that happen to you? Come on, all of you. All of you have had that happen. It's really true. And so it's part of that sequence. And the next slide. Then you go through the letting go. And what happens with that, as I love that children's story, you say, oh, if only I got a PhD in Middle English E. I don't want to do that. Well, if only I could just move to another town. Well, I'm not going to do that. Well, if only, and it goes, if onlys, and what it ends up being is, if only I were a better person. If only I were smarter, or taller, or something, right? Now, come on, how many of you have experienced that? I want to see all your hands. Yeah. Because everybody goes through this. It's that letting go. It's also called the if-only stage. If only I had another degree. If only I were a better person. And from that, we get to the next slide. The blahs. You know, it's that place where you say, oh, I don't have any energy. I don't know what to do with myself. Come on, hang your head. You know? So you get kind of down, and nothing is red, nothing is purple, nothing is bright colored, it's just kind of gray. And this happens to everyone. It's part of the cycle of work, the part of the cycle of life, but we're focusing in on work, the cycle of work. And so what happens is, if you stay here too long, you become depressed because there doesn't seem to be any path out. And so sometimes then people will go back and forth between letting go and the if-onlys to being just blah and back and forth. But obviously there's more paper here, so we can have a bit of optimism. And the next one. Starting over. What I loved about this children's story is that this child kept starting over. She kept pounding and hammering, and she would glue things, and it wasn't ever right because she wanted to create something magnificent, but she didn't know what it was, and she kept starting over. So when I went through this, I thought, well, you know, as a child, I really like to garden. Maybe I'll just become a gardener and I'll start selling plants out in the market. You know, I didn't want to do that. Well, you know, maybe I'll start, and you start down a path. You think, I'm going to start down this path and see what happens with that. You know, so I like to write, so maybe what I'll do is become a reporter. But that didn't work. So think of this children's story. It's all work, and it's all something that we do. And then finally, one of those hooks will take on a new life. So for me, I was really fortunate. I had come to the end, after about 4 years of teaching everything in the English department that I could think of that I wanted to do for the freshman, sophomore level. I decided I would go back to college because I had always been passionate about work since I was a child. And I was the crazy kid who I would ask my father, well, what is it that you do? And I would ask other people, well, what is it that you do? And how do you do it? And how did you learn to do it? And you know, I was always interested in that. So I decided, well, maybe what I should do is become a career counselor at the community college level. It just so happened that San Jose State offered, in the old program that I know of, a master's in career counseling for adults. That's pretty amazing. I don't know of any other school that offers that. I was so excited. So that meant that I had at this time 3 children, a husband, and various social activities. And so I did night school for 3 years to get a master's in career counseling for adults. I loved it. I just couldn't. So I'm saying this to you because I want you to be thinking about those things that you've come to and how you got into your next career. So I talked to the community college person, and they really didn't need anybody in the career department, but just so happened that in the newspaper in that spring was an article about a career counseling program at the high-tech lab that was in the city where I lived. career counseling for scientists and engineers. But they already have their PhDs. They're already the best of the best in their field. Why would they want a career program? Well, it turns out that back in the 1960s was a great deal of concern about the half-life, and she is nodding, the half-life of engineers. Do you remember any of that story? So a lot of work began about the half-life of engineers and the half-life of scientists, and what do you do about that? Well, the thought at that time was, well, you just keep going back to school. Well, you know, once you have your master's or your doctorate in that, probably you're not going to go back to school. But there was also a scientific research study done at the MIT Sloan School of Management called Creativity for Scientists and Engineers. Now remember, I was working at a high-tech research lab that was filled with scientists and engineers. So I read that cover to cover. And indeed, much of what I'm talking about this morning is what they talked about. So let's just keep this slide up. So what they said was that everybody has a life cycle in a particular job. For me, it's about 3.5 to 4 years. They said this was true of their scientists, by the way. 3.5 to 4 years. Now, let's look at this. You've got your new direction. And then the first couple of years, you're really learning it, right? You're really the newbie. You're just getting your feet wet, right? All those terms that we know. There are some people who just really like changing jobs every 2 years. Every 18 months or 2 years. They always like to be on that high learning curve. As soon as they learn just enough to be dangerous, they're off to the next job. Perfectly valid. These are people who really, after 18 months to 2 years, need to change jobs. The competency level you will know is when somebody starts asking you how to do something, right? So that's when you know you're competent at it. And when you finally get to that mastery level, you are the expert. And people are either afraid to come to you and ask you, or you're the one who really does know. So Sloan School said that for scientists and engineers that was about 5 years. And then they needed to change jobs, and we'll talk about that in a moment. For me, I've worked with literally thousands of people who have been in the middle of a job change or who have been laid off. So I've done both. And what I've discovered is that most people seem to have about 3.5 to 4 years when they're really excited and interested in their job. A few people head on up to mastery, and everybody wakes up one day and says, "Is that it? I'm done." Let me give you a sideways example. For the last 6, 7, 8 years, I was the lead person at Ollie's writing group. Loved it. This is a group of writers who just every week, we have several people in here who are part of that group, who love to write and who like to be inspired to write and who like to be held accountable. After about 3, 4 years, we changed it so it wasn't just once a month, but it was twice a month. Here's the distinction. And that we became a little bit more demanding. And so then it was another 4 years, and then I woke up last spring and said, "I'm done." I love these people. I love this group, I love the topic, and I'm done. And because I know this cycle so well, it still takes the courage to say, okay, I'm going to let it go. And I'm going to allow myself to go through this and to go through. For me now, it's a short time. I've been through it several times. So then I can quickly begin to get to say, okay, what else would I want to do? It's important to know what your cycle is. One way you can tell is by the number of times you change jobs. Now let's get back to this scientific research lab. They recently hired me and a group of us to be career counselors. It was because they wanted their scientists and engineers to be stimulated, excited, really passionate, creative in their jobs for their entire 40-year expected history with that organization. Look, he's shaking his head, impossible. So I was hired to help people be creative. What a job. It was wonderful. And here's what I learned about that. So you can be in, here's how you stay vital, enthusiastic, alive, excited, and creative in your work, even in the same work, is that you're going to change something about it based on your own timeline every 3 to 4 years. For me, I get restless after 3.5. I begin to look around. And you do too, after a certain point of time. And so for those who are aware of that, you begin to say, okay, I need to do something to change. I still like to be in this field, but I need to do something different. So sometimes you change bosses. Sometimes you change locations. For the scientific research lab, there were always new projects. Engineers as a whole hate to change. I'm just saying that. So I was working with a lot of engineers. My boss forced me to change. For 6 months they would crab. And then they got into it. And they got their creative juices again. So I would say to each one of you, how many of you can identify your timeline when you're about, 3 to 4 years, 1 to 2 years, maybe 5 to 7? Can you identify the number of years? Come on. Think about the jobs that you've held. You might have held jobs for many, many years, but you've done different things. Okay. So I came in as the career consultant, low woman on the totem pole. Learned a lot of things, wrote a master's thesis on creativity. I had great people to study. And what is it that blocks them from being highly creative? Well, I did that for about 3 or 4 years, and then they insisted that I change jobs to become a trainer. Okay. And so then, after about 3 or 4 years, then I ended up as the training manager. Well, that was fun. And then ended up not just as the training manager for human resource kinds of things, communication, all kinds of skills, but also I had all the trades. And I've always been fascinated with the trades. So these were people who were learning to be carpenters. They were going through a formal program, painters, electricians. Did you know that painters in a high-tech organization have to learn many, many ways of handling paint on many, many different surfaces? It's not just painting walls. That was fun. Even managed a trainer who was environmental protection. That was fun. And then my organization said, we're going to go through a decentralizing. So instead of having one training organization that took care of 8,000 people, we're going to put all the trainers out into all the organizations. By the way, this happens in every organization, every institution, no matter what kind of, anytime there's a big group, about every 3 to 4 years. Oh, here we go through a centralizing again. We're going to bring it all back, but I just got comfortable. Well, no, now we're going to do a decentralizing. So they decided to decentralize, and really, I didn't have a job. So I hit the end before my time. I wasn't done yet. And that happens to a lot of us. And you still have to go through all of this and start figuring out the new. So what I would say to you is that work is dynamic. We have the opening song. Most of you knew the words to I've Been Working on the Railroad. We'll have a couple of other familiar ones too. Work is important. Work is what you do. Work is what shows who you are to the world. It shows your personality. It shows your style. It's your belief system. It's what you believe and do in the world. So that's not just a heavy, oh dear statement. But you bring your personality, you bring what's important to you from the time that you're very, very young. I'm still not a person that will broadcast seed. I still like it into each place. So we have a couple of minutes here. And what I would like to hear from a couple of you, well, so let's just do some of the basics. Knowing this whole cycle, this whole sequence, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask where you are in this sequence. How many of you right now have hit the end? Good. Yeah. How normal. I just want to say that. How normal, how human of you. How many of you have been going through the letting go? If only I had. If only. Not many right there, just a couple. How many have kind of gone through the blahs? You're sitting there in the blahs. I want you to know that's really healthy. You hate it. And it's very healthy. And how many of you thought, well, you'll start over doing something else? Yeah. And how many of you have already started into your new part and you're still in that newbie exciting stage? A few. Yeah. How many of you have now become competent and have achieved that level of mastery? Now, so in order to stay vital all of your life, the other thing that the Sloan School of Management said was that it was good to have about 3 projects at the same time. About 3 different activities that you're doing. You can have one major one, but it will have maybe 3 components in it. If you have only 1 or 2, it's too narrow. You can't be as creative. Remember, they were writing about scientists and engineers. I found this to be true for everyone. So if you have only 1 or 2, you get myopic. You just stuck on one. If you have 4, what happens? Scattered. What do I do next? What am I? Okay. So keep yourself to about 3. It's not rigid, about 3. And if you can stagger them, knowing that you're going to be going through all of this, but do them at different times. So then, the letting go and the blahs don't hit you quite so hard. So you know, for one, it's going to end up on May 1st. Well, and if you can kind of schedule, who knows, the next, okay. What about volunteer work? Let's talk about it in 2 different ways. For people who stay in their job for a long time, but they're beginning to get a little bored, but they need to stay in their job. And I'm not one of those that says, just quit. You know, I always needed an income. So people then sometimes would say, and they get really involved in their volunteer work. And so their daytime job becomes a daytime job, and they put all of their creative energy into their hobbies, special interests, their volunteer work. Okay. The church loves you. And for those who really are pursuing volunteer work, either because you're now retired, I don't know what that word means actually, but you're not being paid for work, so you have additional time, I would suggest to you that you'll go through this same pattern. And you'll say to yourself, but it's not supposed to happen that way. And this is not only career theory, but career practicum. So if you want to stay vital, enthusiastic, alive, excited, stimulated, who doesn't want that? Tell me, who doesn't want that? Anybody? Yeah, everybody wants to be vital, enthusiastic. I want to imprint that in your brain, and creative. Then you will know that you will need to come up to change every so often. It is what's done. And you will go through the newbie phase, and you'll go through the phase that says, I don't know what I'm doing. And that's work. That's the joy of work. It's God-given, and it's up to you to put it out to the world, because you, in your work, no matter what it is, bring yourselves. We have a couple of minutes here. Is there anyone who wants to speak to any part of that? Good. So the thing to do would be after the service, when we're back in the social room, talk about the work you do. And now you know why I come up to some of you and say, well, tell me what you do, because I'm really interested. Okay, I'm really interested. Would you help me extinguish the flame? So we have our special duties. She knows how to light the flame and to extinguish it. So we extinguish. Oh, we have to do a song first?
That's right.
Well, we do a song first. Thank you.
128.
128. So notice the appropriateness of the title and of the words. We're all we sing our thanks and praise, for all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs that others serve, for services we give, for our grant its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow now we bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. And now we come to the benediction, the extinguishing of the chalice. and we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts till we are together again. As we come to the end of our worship service today, we also arrive at the beginning of our ministry for the week ahead. We hope that this morning has been meaningful for you and that you will leave here with a sense of connection, joy of work, and possibility. Thank you.